phone calls and emails from all over the nation, and spend a lot of time on the phone and answering the same questions. So I want to rattle off a few things here that might help some of you with coaching, and these are the things that we cover in our Wrestling Academy with our kids. Our DVDs, Foundation Wrestling DVDs, cover some coaching advice and tips and tactics and things. But in a nutshell, here's a couple things that we do with Purler Wrestling Academy and at our camps and whatnot that tend to help, I think, keep our kids moving forward quickly. I often say that there's no shortcut, but there is a fast track, and that's what you want, is to be on a fast track. So one thing we do is I say we underteach over drill. Instead of having 9 different ways to score from a front headlock, we're going to cover the 3 or 4 best ways. I just say what's going to work on against the Penn State guy, let's say. And over the course of a year, we'll hit thousands of reps of those techniques. And so underteach over drill, that's probably the best approach. And as far as your technique regimen, you're better off looking at the most common positions kids find themselves in on the wrestling mat and pick the best few techniques from there. And that's sort of our technique recipe that we use in our training and our camps, and is outlined on our Foundation Wrestling instructional DVDs. So that's one key area. Follow a plan. You want a plan to follow so that you're not bouncing around in your practices. That's the key. We don't do any running at practice or conditioning. I think probably last month of season, it's not a bad idea to hit some sprints, go hit some bleachers and stuff right after practice for the middle school and high school kids. Youth programs, we don't do any running at all. Even at that level, at the high school level and so forth, we don't. We stick with wrestling. They're going to get a lot of conditioning out of wrestling. As long as you're running an organized practice and you're keeping these kids' feet moving, they're going to be in condition. So we don't do a lot of time running. I hear all the time kids have a 2.5-hour practice, 2-hour practice. They're running for 40 minutes in the hallways. I see that as a complete waste of time. We also don't run our wrestling camps. We don't do push-ups. There's no college kids running around screaming at the kids. Our camps are wrestling camps. So we wrestle at our wrestling camp. If you want an intensive camp where you're going to run and get screamed at and do push-ups, go somewhere else. Our wrestling practices are pretty much the same way. As far as morning practices, I would stick with the technique format. I had a great coach in college, Josie. One time, we got done with a good practice where we spent an hour and a half and just nothing on top with bars and putting arms behind the back and so forth. And after practice, he said, "Hey, you guys tired?" We said, "No." "You sweaty?" "No." "You exhausted?" "No." "But did you get better at wrestling today?" And we all kind of smiled and said, "Yeah, we got a lot better." And so that's kind of our plan for morning practices is I wouldn't run and sprint and do all that. These kids are tired, they're staying up late studying, they're getting up early enough as it is, they're growing, they need to rest. I would do a morning practice of maybe 45 minutes. It would be all leg riding, single leg finishes on the mat, getting out of a front headlock, 2 setups to your leg attack, things like this, because we want our kids to be skilled. That's who's going to make it to college wrestling. So, if you're going to have morning practices, there's no need to kill them and no need to waste their time. Let's get these kids skilled on the mat, because that's what's going to help in wrestling. Wrestling's taught nowadays, it's all a conditioning / tough man contest. That's not the case. Sure, there's some of that in college wrestling when you're at the big-time D1 wrestling, top 2, 3, 4, 5 programs in America. Sure, that might be what separates, this world-class athlete from the other one. But not at our level, we got to be skilled on the mat. So that's what I do with morning practices. As far as styles, we don't teach a style of wrestling. The Iowa style or Oklahoma State style. They recruit guys who already wrestle that way. As normal coaches, we got to teach this kids wrestling. Let their style develop on its own. Move in, tweak it a little bit. Let these kids wrestle the way they wrestle. There's no wrong way to wrestle. As long as you're not breaking the rules and you're following a good plan, everyone's going to have a different style of wrestling. So I would not teach a style of wrestling. Something I hear all the time, people throw their best kids under the bus. You got a kid who's ranked #1 in the state at 135 or whatever. He makes weight, and you throw him up a weight class against another great wrestler, and you're getting your best kid beat. I want my best kid at his weight class. If he's undefeated, good for him. If we lose a dual meet because I didn't bump my best kid up, hey, it's not my goal to get my best kid's confidence crashed and wrecked before the state tournament. So I hear that all the time. I think it's a big coaching mistake. And And as far as the feeder system, you want to have a plan in place there too, so that everyone's building into your middle school or high school program who's been through some kind of a plan. And so it's important to get the youth program on a feeder system as well. Last thing, preach and teach smart wrestling, not just hard wrestling. You got to get these kids wrestling smart. I often say I would rather my kid win 1-0 than 13-12. It's still a 1-point match. I want him to win 13-0 one day, but at this point in time, it's a close match. I want him to be a smart wrestler and following a plan, following a real disciplined technique regimen, not wasting the kids' time, keep the wrestlers wrestling, and teaching them to wrestle smart, tactical, high-percentage wrestling. That's probably, well, it's a secret to our success, and I think it could be yours too.